On the night of September 27, 1996, at 10 p.m., Sheriff Jeff Thomas was patrolling Interstate 72 in Decatur, Illinois, in the Midwest of the United States. He noticed a car parked on the side of the road with its lights on. The driver's door was open, but there was no one in or around the car. Jeff, who had a keen sense of detection, realized that someone might be missing or killed. He contacted the police station right away. In the car, he found a wallet, a half-eaten bag of candy, and some scattered coins. However, there was no identification in the wallet. He also found some coal dust and concrete pieces near the brake pedal. To facilitate the investigation, Jeff took the car back to the police station. He soon learned that the owner of the car was a local car salesman, 34-year-old David Swan. When the police contacted David, he calmly told them that the car was used by his girlfriend, Karen Slover. She had dropped off her 3-year-old son Chris at her ex-husband's house in Macon County the day before and planned to pick him up that day. The ex-husband's mother, Jenny, said that Chris had stayed at her house for a day, but Karen never came. They had not seen Karen either. The police investigated and found out that Karen had recently received a modeling offer from New York. Could she have left by herself? Karen's parents' answer overturned this guess. They said that Karen would not leave alone. She would definitely take her son with her. She loved Chris very much. 2 days after Karen disappeared, the case made a new progress. On the morning of October 1, 1996, a fisherman on Lake Shelbyville found a gray plastic bag on the shore. Out of curiosity, he opened the bag. He could not believe his eyes. It was a human head. It was a young girl's head with blonde hair. There were 6 bullet wounds on the head from a .22 caliber handgun. The bullets were very common in the United States, so they did not help much with the case. Later, the police found other bags containing body parts in the nearby water. These bags were wrapped with a lot of tape. In addition to body parts, there were also concrete pieces and coal pieces in the bags. These heavy objects were probably used by the killer to sink the body parts. Moreover, because the body parts had been soaked in water for a long time, they were already swollen and discolored. After that, the police put together the whole body. The victim was cut into pieces while wearing clothes. An electric tool was used for cutting. The coroner also found 6 black dog hairs on the tape outside the plastic bags. Because this case had a great impact, the police immediately formed an investigation team. The sheriff in charge of this case, Jeff Thomas, speculated that this body might be the missing person who abandoned the car on Friday night. Meanwhile, news came from the coroner's office that they confirmed the victim's identity from her dental records, 23-year-old Karen Slover. This also confirmed Jeff's guess. In addition, the coal and concrete pieces in Karen's body bags and car were identical in composition. That is to say, the killer drove Karen's car to dump her body here. After that, the police questioned Karen's friends around her. Karen left Decatur by car at around 5 p.m. on September 27 after partying with her friends. Her car was found on the roadside at around 10 p.m. that night. That is to say, her time of death was between 5 p.m. and 10 p.m. There is a saying in America, if a wife is killed, the first suspect should be her husband. This time it was no different. Although Karen had divorced her ex-husband Mike, there were still some problems between them. Karen's ex-husband had a serious tendency to violence. Mike's family also hated Karen very much. More importantly, Karen was killed on her way to her ex-husband's house. So Mike was very suspicious. But Mike had an alibi on the day of Karen's disappearance. He was working from 5 p.m. to 10 p.m., which his colleagues could testify for him. Therefore, Mike's suspicion was ruled out. Then, the police turned their attention to Karen's current boyfriend David. David had clashed with law enforcement before. He was also arrested and jailed for impersonating a police officer. In addition, he had a psychiatric record. David had quarreled with Karen before she died, and they only knew each other for a month. But David said he and Karen had a good relationship and planned to get married soon. The police also found something terrible. David had killed and dismembered a deer. Although David also had an alibi, there was a big loophole in it. David claimed that he was attending a rehearsal for a friend's wedding on the night of the murder, but a witness said that David was 45 minutes late that night. The place where Karen's car was found was only a 10-minute drive from the rehearsal site. From a time perspective, David was very suspicious, and he also had a motive for the crime. Karen wanted to go to New York to develop her career, which made him angry. The two had a tense relationship recently, but without conclusive evidence, the police could not get a search warrant for David's house. The case was deadlocked as a result. 6 months after the crime, the police decided to interrogate David again and hoped that he would confess his guilt. The interrogation lasted for 4 hours, during which David finally remembered why he was late for the rehearsal that night. He went to an ATM to withdraw money. The bank surveillance video confirmed David's words and also cleared his suspicion. Although the result was not what the police expected, as time passed, Karen's dismemberment case gradually faded from the public's memory. Soon 2 years passed. Time came to 1998. Sheriff Michael Mannix noticed this case. He found out that on the night of Karen's disappearance, her ex-husband Mike had called his mother Jenny 12 times. The number of calls made him suspicious. The most important thing was that the time of the calls was exactly when Karen disappeared. Although Mike had an alibi, his parents did not. In addition, Mannix also found out that Mike's father, old Mike Slover, worked at a local power plant. He got off work at around 5 p.m. every day. Mike's mother Jenny did not work. She was a housewife. More importantly, Jenny hated Karen very much. She played a very important role in Mike and Karen's divorce. But Jenny loved her grandson Chris very much. Mike's neighbors also remembered something. There was a piece of land owned by Mike's family about a mile away from Mike's house. They kept 2 dogs there and usually did not care about them. But after Karen disappeared, Mike's family changed the place completely. They were busy for a long time that day, mowing grass, paving things, and burning things. The police suspected that Mike's family was trying to get rid of anything related to killing Karen. To find evidence, the police contacted a famous local geologist, Moj. He compared the concrete and coal dust found in Karen's body bags with those from Mike's vacant yard. The result was chilling. When the 2 samples were placed under a microscope, Moj found that they were very similar in shape. They might be the same thing. Then Moj ground the 2 samples into powder and irradiated them with X-rays. He found that their chemical compositions were also very similar. Finally, Moj told the police that the concrete collected from Mike's house and the concrete in Karen's body bags and car were similar in composition. This place was very likely to be the first crime scene. But just as the case made a breakthrough, Mike's family quietly moved away. They got custody of Chris and moved to Tennessee overnight. To find conclusive evidence, the police began a thorough search of Mike's vacant yard the next day after they left. The search involved a huge amount of manpower and material resources. A total of 60 buckets of soil samples were collected and analyzed throughout the winter. Finally, they found a key clue. A button. It was exactly the same as the one on Karen's jeans. Then, they found another button, also identical to Karen's jeans. In addition, there was also a white cotton button. The coroner also compared Karen's clothes with the button fibers. They could be perfectly spliced together. It could be determined that this was where Karen died for the first time. Finally, to ensure nothing went wrong, the police also compared the dog hair on the tape with DNA from Mike's dog. The result was that it was very likely that they came from the same dog. On January 26, 1999, Mike's family was arrested at their new home in Tennessee. With the arrest of the killer, the truth of Karen's death that year also came to light. On September 27, 1996, when Karen went to pick up her son at Mike's house, Jenny learned in advance that Karen wanted to leave Decatur. She was afraid that she would never see her grandson again. In order to keep her grandson Chris, she had a murderous intention towards Karen. Jenny admitted in prison that she had invited Karen to the empty yard that day. As Karen got out of the car and approached her, she shot her 6 times. Then she and old Mike began to deal with Karen's body. They also called their son Mike several times. The couple put Karen's body parts into plastic bags and filled them with concrete and coal. They drove Karen's car to Lake Shelbyville and threw the bags with body parts into the lake. Then they drove the car to the side of Interstate 72. After that, they left by car. On May 18, 2002, the 3 were sentenced to 60 years in prison for first-degree murder. Mike and his father were charged with concealing the crime and sentenced to an additional 5 years in prison, a total of 65 years. With Mike's family in jail, Chris's grandfather finally won custody. Chris, who is now grown up, works at a local design company. Shortly after Karen's case was closed, a similar case occurred in New Mexico. It was also for the custody of the grandson. The mother-in-law killed her daughter-in-law and cremated her to escape the crime.